All right, welcome back to MaxBet Podcast. I am your host, Hillary McAfee, and today we're going to do something a little bit different. I'm going to bring you the top 5 stories in gaming from this past week. What makes them the top 5? Frankly, I said so. Second would be I'm chronically online, I'm researching, and I'm doing it to bring them to you. Anyway, this is MaxBet. All right, this first story we need to talk about without losing the plot. FanDuel replaced CEO Amy Howe this past week, and yes, it's getting labeled as an involuntary exit, which I just don't love that. I feel like it's kind of rude, but anyway, it's business. But in a male-dominated industry, I think it's really important. We can't jump to, well, what went wrong with her and miss the bigger picture here, because this is actually much bigger than just Amy Howe. All right, so first, a few important facts leading up to this. One, Flutter lowered guidance recently for their 2026 projections, where they said, hey, we're actually not going to make as much money as we thought we were. Like, I know we said we were probably going to make this much money this year. We're going to make a lot of money, but probably just 1% less than that. And so then that spooked investors, making the stock dip quite a bit. Overall, growth is also slowing compared to like the rocket ship years of online gaming legalization. And there's now increasing pressure around profitability and what comes next. Okay, so now that we know that, we also have to zoom out. Because if you look at Amy Howe's tenure objectively, there's also a lot she did right. She helped take FanDuel to a very clear number 1 spot in the US market, held roughly a 39% market share, scaled aggressively during legalization, navigated regulatory complexity when a lot of other brands didn't. And she also kept a very disciplined approach when it came to marketing and responsible gaming. So this was not a she wasn't good enough situation. That's just not an accurate read on this. I think what changed is just the environment around the business. Like that easy growth era really started to shift. We have fewer new states opening, higher acquisition costs, investors caring way more about profitability than pure growth, prediction markets, enough said, and just overall Wall Street becoming very impatient. So the question companies are asking now isn't who helped build this, it's really who is best positioned to help us get to that next phase. And I think that's where the leadership change is really interesting, because they brought in someone with a much heavier background in regulation, legal strategy, and market structure, which really tells you exactly where they think the market is headed. So my take is this feels a lot less like Amy Howe failed and more like FanDuel thinks the industry is entering into a different era. I have no idea if that was the right move. That is way above my pay grade, but that's just my objective view looking in, evaluating the facts. This feels more like a signal than a reaction. I think we're getting to a point where leadership is now being judged on what comes next and not what have you built. All right, a quick break to talk about one of our sponsors, IGT. 2026 marks 30 years of Wheel of Fortune slots, which is kind of wild when you think about how iconic that brand is in casinos. The show has been around for over 50 years. The slot machine just built its own legacy on top of that. Wheel of Fortune slots has made over 1,200 millionaires and paid out over $3.7 billion in jackpots. To celebrate, IGT is collaborating with Wheel of Fortune and Carnival Cruise Line for a fully integrated week of shows where they're actually bringing on some of the newest slots onto the Wheel of Fortune stage. That includes games like Wheel of Fortune Cash on Reels, Wheel of Fortune Trio, and Wheel of Fortune Premium Wheel. So it's really a moment that blends TV legacy with the casino floor. You can catch these fully integrated shows the week of May 18th through 22nd, or stream them on Peacock and Hulu. And now back to the show. All right, second, prediction markets. What is going on? So first, Massachusetts' highest court sounded pretty open to blocking Kalshi from offering sports contracts without a gaming license. And during those arguments, judges were basically like, how is this not sports betting? Meanwhile, a coalition of 40 states plus DC sent comments to the CFTC saying prediction markets are essentially sports betting by another name and are bypassing state gaming laws, taxes, and tribal agreements. 40 states and DC. So regulators are absolutely pushing back, but Kalshi has also raised money at a reported $22 billion valuation this week, which is why this whole thing feels so bizarre, because on one side, you've got lawsuits, injunctions, states panicking, and on the other, investors are going, yeah, but what if this is huge? Also, this got a little darker this week. 2 people in Israel were charged after allegedly using insider military information to place prediction market bets related to Iranian strikes, which is just not great. And then apparently, because this week just needed one more layer, the U.S. Senate unanimously backed banning lawmakers and staff from using prediction markets entirely. So right now, the industry is basically watching states fight federal regulators, sports books planning for this to stay around, and prediction markets continuing to grow through all of it, which honestly feels a little like watching someone parallel park a yacht, but I digress. Story number 3, UFC betting is back under scrutiny, allegedly. UFC is different than most sports because it's one-on-one. Outcomes can change very quickly, and there are fewer people involved. So when weird betting patterns start showing up, it raises questions very fast. And that's already happened. There have been real cases where bets came in heavily on a specific outcome, sports books pulled the lines, and then regulators got involved. So now the concern is this easier to influence than other sports? And then you combine that with live betting, faster bets, more in-play action. It just puts more pressure on the system. Basically, UFC betting keeps coming up because it's one of the easiest sports to question when something looks off. Story number 4 is don't mess with Canada. Ontario's regulator, the AGCO, fined operators tied to pragmatic play and relaxed gaming this week. Why? Because their games showed up on unregulated sites that Ontario players could still access. Big no. So the message from Canada is basically, if you want to be in our regulated market, you can't be anywhere else. Canada is not the place to test how flexible rules are. They will just tell you. They'll just tell you right there. Story number 5. So the Wynn's massive UAE casino project is now facing, quote, modest delays. They are saying the delays are tied to supply chain issues and logistics problems caused by the Iran conflict in the region, which is one of those stories where you remember, oh, yeah, this isn't just an easy casino build. This is a $5 billion project to bring luxury gaming to the Middle East during geopolitical instability. So a lot to unpack there, but nobody can really blame them. Feels a little bit out of their control. So the Wynn keeps calling it a modest delay, which feels like a very calm executive way of saying, there are absolutely larger conversations happening here. All right, guys, that's all I had for you this week. You're caught up. Congratulations. And follow along for all things gaming. We'll see you next time.